What if I told you your dog didn't find you by accident? She chose you across lifetimes. According to Edgar Cayce, that startling idea isn't just a poetic notion. It's exactly what happened to one little dog named Mona. Picture a woman sitting on the edge of a worn sofa, a small dog tucked obediently at her feet, breathing steady, ears twitching at the sounds of the room. The dog's name is Mona. She follows her owner from room to room, puts her head in the crook of a knee, and somehow knows the exact moment to nudge a hand when it trembles. To everyone who loved her, Mona was simply Mona, warm, loyal, inexplicably familiar. Then one day the woman sat with Edgar Cayce and asked a question no one expected. Where had Mona come from? Cayce's reply startled the room. Mona, he said, had once been a lioness. Not a metaphorical fierceness. He described an incarnation in the Roman arena. That image knocks the breath out of us. A small lapdog who curls into a sunbeam, once pacing the rim of a vast echoing coliseum, sensing the thunder of a crowd and the ancient rhythm of hunt and hunger. The contrast shocks us because it forces a rearrangement of how we think about animals, about souls, and about the ties that bind across forms. According to Edgar Cayce, this wasn't an isolated detail. It was part of a broader picture. The souls we love may weave through many shapes, and the bonds they form with us are sometimes older than the names we give them. If you're listening because you've ever reached down to stroke an empty pillow and felt the cold where a warm nose used to be, this is for you. If you've been told that grief for a pet is less than other griefs, or if you've sat at night wondering whether the little life you loved simply ends in dark silence, the Cayce perspective offers a different frame, one that honors the depth of your loss without closing the door on mystery. According to the Cayce readings, the universe is spirit manifesting into form. This is the big, sweeping idea behind many of Edgar Cayce's insights. There is a single life, a single consciousness, that expresses itself through mineral, vegetable, animal, and human kingdoms. Each kingdom is a way for spirit to experience particular aspects of being: solidity, growth, sensation, self-awareness. Animals, in this account, are not mere automatons. They carry a life essence, a soul-like presence that experiences, learns, and expresses. Yet Cayce is careful to make a distinction that matters. Animals, as he described, do not possess the same faculty of moral free will that humans do. That difference changes how one imagines an animal's spiritual trajectory. It does not make them lesser in value. It simply places them on a different kind of path. This distinction helps explain why Cayce's stories of animals feel neither sentimental nor simplistic. The dog who knew her owner's moods might do so from an intuition that is deep and emotionally real, what Cayce sometimes framed as a kind of group mind or shared instinct, while still preserving the dog's unique personality and warmth. Cayce used examples like Mona to suggest that personality and essence continue beyond a single life, and that often souls travel together. Friends in one life may cross paths again in another, sometimes as humans, sometimes as animals, sometimes across kingdoms. He spoke of soul groups, clusters of life essences that move together through various forms, picking up traits, lessons, and relationships along the way. There were other readings that seemed to echo the Mona story. A niece who asked about a certain family pet found details in a Cayce session that fit neatly into memories and mannerisms nobody else could explain. A 16-year-old in another case reported memories of life in ancient Egypt that included animals and the ways humans and beasts shared close spiritual bonds. Taken together, these readings create a pattern, not a proof in any scientific sense, but a pattern that suggests continuity. That pattern is what draws people, especially those who are grieving, toward Cayce's work. It gives a language for what they already feel, that the love between a human and a pet is not trivial, not merely biological, but threaded into something deeper. Of course, these are not empirical propositions in the laboratory sense. Cayce himself described his source as the Akashic Records, a metaphysical archive of all that has been and will be, available through states of consciousness he entered. For many, that claim will sit as an article of faith. For others, as a poetic option worth considering. Either way, what matters for most pet owners is not a debate about metaphysical proof, but a response to grief. When your world narrows after you lose a dog, when the home feels too quiet, when you half reach for a bowl at breakfast out of habit, comfort matters. It matters deeply, and the Cayce readings offer a framework that validates that comfort while also attempting to explain it. What does this framework mean in practice? First, it validates grief. If animals carry an enduring essence, then losing a pet is losing someone significant. Mourning is not excess, it is appropriate. Cayce's material gives permission to feel the ache, to allow your tears and your memories their rightful place. Grief, in this view, is an expression of love that continues even when a form has changed. Second, it reframes daily care as sacred. If relationship with animals is a spiritual contract of sorts, not in a transactional way, but as a soul-to-soul undertaking, then feeding, grooming, training, and simply being present are acts of devotion. The small rituals matter. The hand that scratches behind the ear at dusk, the walk taken without hurry, the voice that reads the same story each night. These ordinary moments are the ministry we do with animals. According to the Cayce readings, such attentiveness matters not only to the animal's life here, but to the hum of connection that persists beyond. This perspective also changes how we look for signs. Many pet owners speak of dreams where their animal returns, vivid and unmistakable, sometimes ordinary, the dog sleeping in favorite sunlit places, sometimes mildly uncanny, as if the dreamer knows things they could not possibly know. Others report sensations, the sudden feeling that someone has jumped on the bed, the impression of weight where no weight rests, a scent of fur or clean soap that has no source, an unexpected nudge of comfort when thinking about the pet. Some find meaning in synchronicities. A certain song on the radio at the exact moment they think of the animal, a stranger who shows up bearing a kind word or a photograph that resonates, a new animal entering life who seems to carry the same spark. According to Edgar Cayce and many who study and follow the readings, these experiences are common, and while they are not scientific proofs, they are powerful forms of consolation. A listener might ask, is there any medical or practical recognition of this spiritual angle? Here it helps to mention voices like Dr. Doug Coven, a holistic veterinarian who has emphasized the depth of animal sentience and the importance of addressing their whole well-being, body, mind, and what some call spirit. Practitioners like Dr. Coven approach animal care not as merely fixing symptoms, but as tending to relationships and the subtle dimensions that make animals full, responsive beings. That doesn't mean a purely spiritual cure for illness. It means acknowledging that animals matter beyond utility or entertainment. It means making space for emotional as well as physical care. For owners grieving a loss, that kind of holistic perspective can validate actions like holding a ritual, preserving mementos, or creating a quiet place for memory. There's another knot to untangle here, the idea of free will. Cayce's readings often underscore that humans carry a particular kind of moral agency, a capacity to choose, to reflect on consequences, to shoulder responsibility in a way animals do not. That doesn't place humans above animals in value. It simply differentiates the spiritual journey. Animals act from instinct, from sensory immediacy, and from an intimacy with the present that humans sometimes lose. That immediacy is one reason pets become teachers. They bring us back to trust, to simple joy, to the satisfaction of a belly rub or a walk. According to Cayce, because animals' inner life operates differently, their reincarnations and their learning processes follow different patterns. They may return within soul groups, revisit lessons as a collective, and re-enter familiar relationships, sometimes as other animals, sometimes in other roles. But promises of specific future forms or guaranteed reunions are not the message. Love is affirmed, certainty is not asserted. Skepticism is natural and healthy. When someone presents a metaphysical narrative, especially one tied to psychic readings, it's reasonable to weigh it against other beliefs and against evidence. The Cayce readings stand as one tradition among many, not a secular scientific conclusion, not a denominational creed. For those who follow Cayce, the readings resonate because they echo felt experiences, sudden, inexplicable recognition, the gut certainty that a pet's essence continues, the recurring sense of reunion in dream or symbol. For those who approach with doubt, Cayce's material can still be useful as metaphor, as pastoral resource. as a way to dignify an otherwise marginalized sorrow. The invitation is not to replace your belief system, but to expand the options for finding meaning. There are practical ways to honor a pet that align with the Cayce-informed view while staying cautious of spiritual overreach. First, ritual matters. You do not need a cedar altar or elaborate rites. A simple ceremony, lighting a candle, playing a favorite song, saying a few honest words aloud, can shape grief into a narrative. You might create a memory box with a collar, a tuft of fur, a photograph. You might plant a tree or plant a small garden in the pet's favorite spot. These acts are not magic. They are symbolic ways to hold loss and to reweave meaning. Second, speak about the loss. Many cultures ritualize mourning. Modern life often leaves it private, which deepens isolation. Tell friends, post a message in a community group, or write a letter to the pet that names the feelings. If tears come, allow them. If anger surfaces, let it move through you. Cayce's readings at their heart do not counsel suppression. They counsel acknowledgement of love's endurance. Grief is not something to be fixed instantly. It is something to be tended. Third, pay attention to signs without clinging. If you dream of your pet, if a particular scent returns at odd moments, if a new animal's behavior nods toward a familiar mannerism, notice it. Let it console you. But try to hold those experiences lightly. They can be tender medicine, not a chain that binds you to denial. The balance is to be open to meaning while staying anchored in the present life you must continue to live. Fourth, consider acts of service. Many who have lost a pet find solace in helping other animals, volunteering at a shelter, fostering, or simply making small donations to organizations that rescue animals. Serving other creatures is not a diversion, but a continuation of the love you practiced. It channels grief into purpose and ensures that the warmth you once gave continues to circulate. It's also important to address a painful cultural undercurrent. People sometimes dismiss pet grief as trivial or just animals. That dismissal compounds sorrow. According to Edgar Cayce, and according to countless owners, the relationship between a person and a pet can be as transformative as any human relationship. When society minimizes that sorrow, it widens the wound. One of the quiet gifts of exploring Cayce's work is social permission. That it's acceptable, even necessary, to say aloud that losing a dog is losing someone real. If you're listening and have been told to get over it, give yourself permission to resist that pressure. Your grief is real. Your love was real. Let's return for a moment to the image of Mona. Imagine the hush that fell when Cayce suggested a noble past life in a distant arena. Imagine how the woman felt, looking at the dog at her feet and suddenly seeing a different shape. Powerful legs, a mane imagined where there is fur, a life of different rhythms and needs. That mental leap may feel jarring, yet it can also be deeply consoling. If Mona had once exercised a lion's presence and now chooses a lap, that trajectory speaks of mercy, an essence discovering tenderness. That is one of Cayce's gentler themes, that the soul's turns are not punitive but exploratory, learning compassion through varied embodiments. The lioness learns gentleness. The lapdog carries the memory of roar in a lullaby's heart. And then there is the matter of reunion. People often hope for a clear yes or no. Cayce's readings are careful here. They suggest continuity, but avoid strict promises about who we will meet or how reunions will unfold. According to the Cayce readings, love persists, relationships have continuity, and reunion is possible. But certainty about specifics, the exact nature of a reunion, the timeline, the form it will take, is not what Cayce gives us as a guarantee. That restraint is helpful. It keeps us from bargain-making with grief. Instead of offering a guaranteed post-mortem reunion, the Cayce perspective tends to widen our view. Your relationship with a pet matters, it has depth, and your love threads into a larger story. There is masculine comfort in stories that give us control, and a spiritual humility in stories that remind us of mystery. The Cayce readings live more in that second posture. They offer images and narratives that soothe, that dignify sorrow, that suggest the possibility of connection beyond visible life, but they do so without insisting on dogma. They are pastoral in tone, consoling to the bereft, while leaving room for doubt and for personal experience. What about the people who find the Cayce accounts implausible? That is understandable. A worldview in which souls traverse kingdoms and animals carry recurrent essences sits uneasily next to empirical materialism. A healthy response for the skeptic is to accept the Cayce perspective as one interpretive lens among many. Even if you do not accept the metaphysics, you can still see value. The readings honor grief, encourage compassionate care, and remind us that meaningful bonds are not trivial. In that sense, the Cayce material functions as a resource for humane living, whether you adopt all its metaphysical commitments or not. There is also caution to be kept. The longing to communicate with a lost pet can open gates to practices that are unwise. Edgar Cayce's approach points people inward, toward remembrance and responsible mourning, not toward frantic attempts to summon spirits or to engage in risky rituals. If you seek comfort, aim for practices that build resilience. Memorializing, speaking with trusted friends, joining a support group, seeking counseling when grief becomes overwhelming. Physical and mental health needs attention. Spiritual exploration should not replace necessary medical or psychological care. If you are watching this because you recently lost a dog, here are some gentle, practical steps that resonate with the Cayce-informed view, but are broadly useful. Name the pain out loud. Give your grief vocabulary. Naming anchors experience and makes it shareable. Create a simple ritual. It could be as small as lighting a candle each night for a few minutes, playing a piece of music you both loved, or writing a letter to the pet. Ritual validates grief and enacts love. Collect souvenirs of the life. Photographs, a favorite toy, a tuft of fur kept in a box. These are not superstitious relics, but tangible touchstones of memory. Allow stories. Talk about your pet's quirks, the small heroic acts, the habit that made you laugh. Remembrance feeds connection. Serve other animals when you are ready. Compassion spreads healing outward. Watch for signs, and let them console you without letting them override the need to move forward in life. Let them be whispers, not chains. If your grief feels immobilizing, seek a counselor or a bereavement group. Love is honored when it is cared for, not when it is buried under shame or loneliness. There is another thread worth mentioning, the generosity of animals in teaching us presence. According to Cayce, animals exemplify a kind of unguarded engagement with life that humans increasingly lose. The dog who greets you with unembarrassed joy at the door shows a love that is immediate and undemonstrative. If Cayce is right about animals' spiritual continuation, then they also serve as models, not perfect but instructive, for living with trust, gratitude, and the appetite for small pleasures. These lessons are part of why their loss hurts so fiercely. Something of our best selves goes with them. In the final reckoning, what matters most may not be settling metaphysical questions, but honoring love. Whether or not you accept the Cayce readings as literal truth, approaching your pet's life and death with reverence changes you. It makes grief a teacher rather than an enemy. It softens places we had hardened. It invites us to be better caretakers of other beings and to cherish the human heart that can be reshaped by animal love. So what should you take into the rooms where the empty bed sits and the bowl is still? Take this. Your grief is real and holy. Your memories are not illusions. If you find the Cayce narrative comforting, the idea that some essences travel together, that animals possess a soul-like continuity, that love transcends the immediate shape of a body, let it soothe you. If you find it implausible, allow the readings to function as a poem that dignifies sorrow and nudges you toward compassionate action. Either way, let grief be met with tenderness. Before we close, a simple question. Have you ever felt that instant recognition when meeting a pet, as if you'd known one another forever? If that's happened to you, please write about it in the comments. Your stories matter to others who are grieving. There are no bold guarantees here. No one can promise the precise nature of reunion. What the Cayce readings invite us to believe is gentler and to some more radical. Love does not vanish with a form. It continues, sometimes in ways we can feel, and sometimes in ways we only imagine. Perhaps your dog's spirit has already moved on to another shape, and will, in time you cannot yet see, cross paths with you again. Perhaps the bond continues in the small synchronicities that steady you on hard mornings. Perhaps, in a way that sounds both modest and immense, there will be a tail wagging, not in your parlor, but across whatever divides eyes cannot see. Hold the memory. Honor the routine that once shaped your days. Speak the pet's name aloud. Feed the birds or volunteer in the name of the creature you miss. Let tears come and let joy return when it is ready. Most of all, cherish the present companions you still have and treat them as the sacred living gifts they are. If this reflection has touched you, share it with someone who is grieving a pet. And if you want to explore more stories and readings from Edgar Cayce about life, death, and the threads that bind us, consider subscribing to this channel for more conversations that honor mystery without demanding certainty. Remember the image: a small paw against your hand, a warm head on a lap, and somewhere beyond the horizon perhaps, that same loyalty, a tail wagging on the other side.